Hi everyone, my name is Emma and I'm a Visitor Experience Assistant at Guelph Museums. Thanks for joining us for this week's Museum of You activity. This is a weekly series of videos where we will teach you how to turn the everyday things in your life into a museum exhibit all about you. This is the last episode of the Museum of You series, which means it's finally time to take everything you've been collecting over the past few weeks and turn it into your exhibit. Now, I've been talking about museum exhibits throughout this series, but what is an exhibit? When you go to a museum and you see a display of objects, pictures, and information about something that happened in the past, or even about something that's happening in your community right now, that's an exhibit. Exhibits are how museums take all the great information that they have and show it to everyone who visits. Here are a couple pictures of exhibits we've had at the Guelph Civic Museum. Have you ever visited the Guelph Civic Museum? Do you remember seeing any of these exhibits? Museum exhibits are great because they let people see a little bit about life in the past. When you look at objects from the past, what do you think about? Here is a picture from Guelph Museum's Permanent City Gallery. Can you picture these signs in downtown Guelph? Can you picture someone using this technology? When we look at displays like this, it makes us wonder what life was like in the past. What's really fun to think about is that in the future, people will probably go to museums and see exhibits about life as we know it today. In 100 years, do you think people will see exhibits about the year 2021 and wonder what our lives will like? Do you think that they will think our toys and food and clothes will look funny? Do you think they will understand our technology? Today, I'm going to show you how to bring all of the objects, stories, and documents you've collected over the past 5 weeks to make a museum exhibit that could explain what life is like now to someone 100 years in the future. Each of the things that you've collected captures a little bit of information about your life. So together, it should make a pretty good exhibit all about you. We'll imagine that you're going to put this exhibit in a time machine and send it to the year 2121. Your challenge will be to explain what life is like now so that someone who sees your exhibit 100 years from now will be able to understand it. So let's go over what you've already collected. You have your favorite toy or game with a description of how it works. You have 5 photos or pictures. You have your oral history interview about a topic that you're interested in. You have your favorite piece of clothing with a description of it. And you have a recipe or picture of your favorite food. Good job. You have all the material that you need for your exhibit. This is a really important part of the process of making an exhibit. People who work at museums need to make sure they have all the right objects and information. They do lots of research to make sure that their information is correct so that they don't end up saying something silly like, the people who built the pyramids rode on motorcycles, or in the year 2021, everyone ate popcorn for breakfast every morning. Those are obviously wrong. When you make an exhibit, people trust you to tell the truth. So make sure that all of your information is correct so you don't confuse the people in the future who will be looking at your exhibit. One of the main goals of an exhibit is to make sure that you explain all of the things in it. So to help you do that, take a look at the exhibit planner worksheet on our Museum Everywhere page. There's also a link to it on this post. Print it off or get a blank piece of paper to copy it out on. Then get all your worksheets from the previous 5 weeks. You don't have to include absolutely all the information you've collected over the past 5 weeks in your exhibit, so the exhibit planner worksheet will help you decide which information to use in your exhibit. Now let's go through how to fill this out. The first bubble is for the introduction to your exhibit. People who look at this exhibit will want to know who it's about. On your printed out worksheet or blank piece of paper, write out your name, your age, where you live, and what the date is. You can also include a fun fact about you so that whoever looks at this exhibit can already know a little bit more about you. In the next bubble, write the name of the toy or game you chose way back in week 1. Look at your artifact information sheet for that toy or game and read the answers that you wrote to the questions. Choose 1 or 2 answers and write them next to where it says label on this worksheet. This is the information that you will put in your exhibit. Remember, we're imagining someone 100 years from now is going to be reading this. What information do you think that they'll need to be able to understand the toy or game that you've chosen? On the second page, the first bubble is about the photos you took or the pictures you drew. On each line, write a name for each picture. Then, under where it says labels, write a very short description of each picture so that people who look at the pictures in your exhibit will know what they're about. The next bubble is about your oral history interview. On your oral history worksheet, you wrote down what topic you chose. That's where you said what your oral history interview was about. Write that again next to oral history topic on this sheet. Next, think about what you talked about during your interview. Was there something you said that you thought was particularly interesting? Write that down next to favorite part of the interview. Finally, next to where it says label, write a short explanation of your interview topic so that everyone understands a bit about what you were talking about. On the third page, the first bubble is about the piece of clothing that you chose. Fill this bubble out the same way you filled out your toy or game bubble. Write down the name of your piece of clothing, and then next to where it says label, write out one or two of the answers to the questions on the artifact collection sheet you filled out for that piece of clothing. Finally, you'll fill out the recipe bubble. Write the name of the food that you chose. Then, next to label, describe the food and why you like it so much. Good job! Now you have all of your material ready to make your exhibit. This is where the really fun part starts. People who work at museums get to be really creative about how they make their exhibits. Another important goal of any exhibit is to make the exhibit fun to look at. You could have all sorts of interesting information, but if you just write it all down on a big piece of paper, it's not going to be nearly as interesting to read as if you put words together with pictures and objects for people to look at. So now it's up to you to decide how to show off all the objects, stories, images, and documents that you've collected. There are lots of great ways to do this. You can put all of the things that you've collected in a room with your information labels next to them, or if you're good at working on the computer, you can make a document with words and pictures that show all your materials. You can create a mini diorama and make little versions of the things that you've collected out of clay or paper or any other craft supplies that you might have. You could draw pictures of everything you've collected or take photos and stick them on a big Bristol board. You could even record a video of yourself talking about everything you've collected. It's all up to you. Remember, the only goals are to explain your life to someone 100 years from now and to make your exhibit fun and interesting to look at. Here are two different ways that I chose to create my exhibit. The first one is that digital way that I was talking about. So this is a 2-page spread with some pictures and lots of words. So that's one way of doing it. Here's another example of how I could make an exhibit. For this one, I combined objects, printed out pictures, and printed out text, and put them on the wall and on a table to display them. You can see for this that for every object I've included, I've also included a label saying what it is, and another label explaining a little bit about what's in it. If you're going to post anything on your wall, make sure you double check with an adult before you do that. Whether you're speaking out loud, writing by hand, or typing, make sure you include the labels you created in the exhibit planner worksheet next to your artifacts or pictures of your artifacts. Well, that's it. Thanks so much for joining us. I hope you've had fun creating an exhibit for your museum of you over the past few weeks. At the museum, we would absolutely love to see your finished exhibit. Have an adult post a picture of it on social media and tag @Guelph Museums so that we can see what you've created.